Here's what most out-of-state buyers get wrong about Tucson. They think every home here is a deal, but the truth is, some homes in Tucson are massively overpriced, while others are hidden gems waiting to be negotiated. This is why we see two homes in the same neighborhood, the same price. One sells in 3 days, the other sits for over 3 months. I've analyzed thousands of listings to find out why, and I'm breaking it all down in this video. So if you're making a move here to Tucson soon, you will want to know this information before you buy. And as a bonus, I'm going to share with you the 4 things that I look for as a real estate expert here in Tucson that I utilize to save my buyers tens of thousands of dollars when they buy. Stay tuned. Hey, I'm Rich and my family's lived in Tucson for over 150 years. If you want to know everything that there is to know about lifestyle, real estate, and new builds in Tucson and the greater Tucson area, then you've come to the right place. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, tap the bell to stay plugged in so that you don't miss a thing. So jumping right into the number 1 spot is overpricing in some of Tucson's hottest neighborhoods. I'm talking about neighborhoods like Vale, Oro Valley, Saddlebrook, Rancho Vistoso, Dove Mountain, even places and pockets within Midtown and Central like Sam Hughes, Barrio Viejo, Glenman and Elm neighborhood, a lot of the Northwest corridor as well. There are so many different pocket neighborhoods which historically have had a lot of demand, even through different seasons of seasons and different trends that we've had here over the last 5 or 10 years. Those pockets are inundated with this mix and mashup of homes that are priced appropriately for where the market is today, and then homes that are priced appropriately for where the market was 2 or 3 years ago. Now, many out-of-state buyers who may not be as familiar with the Tucson market may think that everything here is a deal and a bargain, but that really isn't the truth. And it takes understanding exactly what the prices and market trends are of each specific area in order to determine whether it's a bargain or not. Now, this issue in particular of overpricing in some of these historically hotter areas is something that happens when sellers mistake perception for value. And oftentimes that can be the seller themselves that are, they've got a perception of what they believe value is, or the price of their house should be based on what their perception is of, how great the house is. It's got 2x6 construction. We have the best kitchen. We have the best floors. We have a brand new AC, whatever that might be. But it also could be a perception of where they saw what the market was 2 or 3 years ago and they're stuck in the past. Now, I think we can all hope that as most sellers end up hiring a real estate professional like myself, too often, unfortunately, I see that the real estate professional doesn't really step up in that listing situation to guide their clients to a data-driven decision in order to price their home. And unfortunately, that's where a seller who isn't met with the appropriate amount of data and a consultative approach, they're going to price their home based on perception. And it could be a price that's way into the distance. It could be a price that's way into the future. But regardless, it's not going to match the price today. Now, as a real estate owner myself here in Tucson, I totally get it. And those of you watching who own real estate, I'm sure you can empathize too. When you look to sell a house that you own, who doesn't want a net top dollar? Of course. But what we're seeing in areas like Oro Valley and Vale, for instance, sellers that are pushing the price, their listing price 5 to 10% above what's indicated as market value, those listings are sitting substantially longer. And for you as a buyer, something to pay attention to is you're going to see usually one of 2 things happen. You're going to see a succession of price drops or price adjustments until they finally hit where the market is. So market demand might be here, their price was here, and they're just going to keep dropping until that hits. That's one thing you'll see. Or you'll see them come off and on the market several times, either with the same real estate agent or a different real estate agent, thinking that it's the real estate agent instead of the pricing. There are for sure those one-off situations in our market, much like there are in any market, where you get a buyer, whether they're from out of state or even locally, who really falls in love with the house. And all of a sudden it becomes a very emotional decision. And you'll find those outliers in the sales that show this house in this neighborhood sold seemingly much higher than all the other comparable sales or anything else that's similar in that area. You'll always get those outliers, but those are few and far between. And the sellers who are priced higher, ultimately, there's something to pay attention to, because from a buyer's perspective, there is a point in time where an overpriced seller gets exhausted. And because they overpriced it, oftentimes they miss their market trajectory, or they miss the opportunity in the market in the first 30 to 60 days when activity and anticipation and excitement around the property is at the highest. And because of that, they end up having to do a succession of price drops that oftentimes means they end up selling lower than where they could have had they just priced where they should have initially. So for a buyer, this is something to pay attention to, because it's a big opportunity that opens up if you're patient and if you understand this strategy and what to look for. One last thing that I wanted to mention about overpriced homes is something that all buyers should be doing is just having an idea, whether it's on Zillow, Realtor.com. If you have a great real estate agent, they should be providing you this on every home that you're considering writing an offer on. But you should have comparables. You should have hand-picked comparables where you've looked through all the photos, it matches in terms, or it's pretty similar in terms of square footage, age, location, condition, upgrades, backyard amenities, view, that sort of thing. Those are some of the really important criteria when you're talking about comping homes that you want to pay attention to. Reason number 2 is poorly renovated, or what we call lipstick renovations. Now, because Tucson has so many older homes built between 1950s and 1980s, there is a lot of updating of homes and a lot of flips that happen in our market as well. Now, although that's great, and a lot of the homes that I've sold in my career, been involved with the sale, have been flips or renovations, I've also seen a flip or renovation that is an example of something you want to be very cautious of, because a lipstick remodel is pretty much everything you see when you walk through the house. It could be the paint, the cabinets, the light fixtures, the tile. But everything behind the walls could be original. So it could be original 1950s sewer. It could be original 1950s galvanized plumbing. Could be original 1950s roof. Any of the major mechanical components, any of the major building structural components could be original, even though you walk in and if a buyer gets really excited because it looks like it's move-in ready, and for all intents and purposes, it could be move-in ready because of the condition, everything behind the walls, all the things really that are going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars when they go wrong. Those are all the things that are overlooked because there's so much excitement because of the lipstick that's been put on the remodel. Now, I think that in some cases, these homes can tend to sit longer. If we see that there's been kind of a half-baked remodel where there's been some of the components that have been updated and then others that haven't, and there's just this huge gap between brand new components on part of the home and then 40, 50-year-old components on the other, oftentimes that can mean that a listing is going to sit longer because buyers are more educated now more than ever, and especially local buyers. If you're not local and you don't understand the Tucson market, that's why taking the time to watch these videos or reach out to people like myself who are an expert and understand the intricacies and nuances of the Tucson market and the homes. This is part of that due diligence to make sure that that you're not swept off your feet by a lipstick flip and overlooking some of the more important things behind the walls. But oftentimes, if we do find a home like this that is kind of half-baked, a lot of the more important components behind the walls haven't been completed, that is cause for concern, and a lot of buyers will kind of steer away from that, or especially if the price is high in comparison to a lot of the other homes in the area. Now, for this reason, there's kind of two ways you can just verify this for any of you watching who might be concerned about this. The first is to make sure you have a qualified real estate professional with you, because when I'm with buyers and we're walking through flips and considering renovations, primarily in Midtown Central, that's where the biggest concentration of these older homes are. It's pretty easy to tell. Having walked through thousands and thousands of homes, it's pretty easy to tell between the property disclosure, which is the disclosure from the seller that says what's been completed, and the home itself, itself. And there's some key areas we can look at and explore in a showing to identify how far this remodel has actually gone, whether it's just a lipstick or whether it's really a lot of the in-ground plumbing behind the walls, all that sort of stuff has been updated as well. So that's area number one that you could catch something like this. The other area would be during the inspection period. And because of that, I highly suggest always getting a home inspection when you're buying a home. Another thing that I'll add in here, I think, which is interesting, and I do think this is one of the things that I've seen over and over again. I'm seeing homes in our market that have been renovated. However, the renovations, the cabinets might be refinished instead of brand new. You can tell that there's flooring in there. It's new, but it doesn't exactly match. You might not have uniform flooring throughout. You might have some type of flooring in the kitchen, different type of flooring in the living room, different type of flooring in the bedrooms. It's almost as if, you know, whatever building components gotten on discount, they buy those, mismatch them. Yes, it's technically renovated, new floors, new cabinets, new countertops, even the appliances. Sometimes the appliances are kind of a mismatch of different ages, even though they look nice, different types of manufacturers. They're kind of pieced together like this Frankenstein flip. And because of that, that is an example of why two flips in the same neighborhood, one's gonna sit for several months, one of them might sell very quickly. Reason number three is the wrong location fit for lifestyle. And what I mean by that is Tucson is geographically spread out. If you look at a map, what appears to be, say, a 10 or 15 minute commute could be 20 to 30 minutes if it's having to go through town, or it doesn't have easy access to the interstate or something like that. Because of that, there are several different areas in the suburban parts of Tucson and rural parts of Tucson that seem like they are within close proximity. And the community may even have a large amount of people living there. But in those communities versus a community that's 5 minutes closer to town, you will see this discrepancy where you're seeing homes just 5 minutes outside, 5 minutes further south from town, or 5 minutes further north from town even, that you're seeing those homes sit for 30, 40, 50 days longer, maybe even more. And then other homes that are only 5 minutes closer, similar age, similar square footage, similar features, and they're selling in less than a week. And so this is one of those disparities that has been identified as I sift through all of this information, because on a map, it can look really close. You could be talking about a very short distance between two communities along the same stretch of road. But that distance means it might be moving from more of a suburban feel to more of a rural feel, which all of a sudden may not be the right lifestyle fit for the majority of buyers who are considering that area. For you as a buyer, that is something to consider, and it's why it made the list. There are several of these communities on the outskirts of Tucson. Within all of them, we see this trend of home sitting because of the extended time to conveniences, grocery stores, trails, employment hubs, that sort of thing. Now, if you are a buyer that's relocating from outside of Tucson or even out of state, and if specifically you're moving from somewhere that's a bigger city or a big city like Tucson Central, something that I see commonly is buyers relocating from other big cities to Tucson oftentimes underestimate the commute time to work or some of the amenities. Before you buy, I would definitely suggest spending some time driving the commute, whether it be Oro Valley, Marana, Vail. Spend a day, make the drive time to some of the amenities, the gym, the grocery store, where your potential employment's going to be, or if you already know where it's going to be. Get a feel for how long it's going to be, that commute from the area that you're looking at, so that it's a little bit easier to manage. Up at number 4 is builder oversupply and poor timing. Now, this is such a critical one. I talk to sellers about constantly. The people who reach out to me and I end up helping them and consulting with them for listing and selling their home. This is such a big topic of conversation. Now, if you're considering buying, the flip is very true for you to understand as well. In newer communities like Rocking K, Gladden Farm, Star Valley, Dove Mountain, builders are constantly releasing new inventory. Now, from both a seller and buyer's perspective, that poses some things to consider. the biggest consideration there is that with new inventory means new competition. And with new competition being the latest, greatest, newest, brightest version of the homes that are available in an area, that competition can mean that you as a homeowner either need to improve your home or you need to improve your price. From a buyer's perspective, if you're a buyer watching this, which most of you are, that is the opportunity right there, is to understand that if you are looking or considering areas that have builder oversupply, then that timing of when those inventory homes are hitting the market can play a part in your negotiation. Now, it can definitely be the reason why two homes that you're going to see, maybe there's only a year or two difference, same floor plan, same price, but the new build, for instance, is going to sell in a week, and the resale, for instance, is going to sell in 90 days. And you're almost certainly going to see a price discrepancy between the two as well when they finally sell. It goes without saying that some resale homes will sit longer because there is a large portion of buyers, a large percentage of buyers who prefer something brand new. I mean, if they're comparing and contrasting between two homes that are the same price, same square footage, same neighborhood, one's brand new, never been lived in, and they've got a builder warranty versus one's 2 years old. Maybe they still have some builder warranty, but it's used, maybe even lightly used. You know, most buyers are probably going to give the nod to the one that's the same price but new. So there almost always has to be a difference in price unless the resale home has some significant reasons that would justify a price equivalent to the new build or higher. Now, I've mentioned this in several videos, but things like examples of that would be like landscaping in the backyard, curtains, you know, interior paint, maybe some additional features like closet built-ins, you know, whether you have California closets come in and rebuilds or build out a custom closet. Those are some examples of things that can be done after the fact that could make a resale as competitive or more competitive than a new build. Before we jump into number 5, for those of you that don't know, I've worked professionally in real estate for over 15 years, and in that time I've helped a couple thousand people buy or relocate to Tucson. So if you're looking for someone to help you, I know this market in and out, from which homes hold value to which homes to stay away from. Feel free to reach out, grab my contact information below in the description. I'll put it on screen here for convenience. You can call, text, email, or schedule a free Zoom consult so that we can get connected. Also, stay tuned because very soon I'm going to share the 4 things as a bonus that I look for to save buyers tens of thousands of dollars. That's going to be a good one you don't want to miss. Now, at number 5 is market misunderstanding. And really the disconnection here is value versus price. I think this could go both ways. Buyers can misunderstand this, sellers can misunderstand this. And depending on who is misunderstanding it, maybe it's both buyers and sellers in one situation, or maybe it's just one in one situation. But regardless, when that misinterpretation is there, that can certainly be a cause for why one home sells in 3 days and the other one that's the exact same sells in 3 months. Now, what do I mean by cost versus value? There is a difference. And when I'm talking about value, from a real estate perspective, value is derived from what is widely accepted in the market as an appropriate price to pay based on what other people have paid for a similar home. You can call that comparable sales. That is very commonly known as comps. An appraisal takes the same approach. Me being a certified appraiser, I know that process very, very well, and I can speak to that. Now, that versus cost is just simply aggregating and totaling up all of the costs associated with actually building the house. Now, those two numbers, cost and value, can be similar. They can be widely different as well. And I guess an example, real life example, would be if a seller has a home that's overpriced and it's on the market, and you as a buyer, you're spectating this, you've seen it, right? You're thinking, man, it's a nice house, but I mean, it's definitely overpriced based on the comparables, right? Based on the other homes on the street or in the neighborhood. That could be an example of a seller who is mistaking cost versus value, because they're thinking, hey, we spent $120,000 to put the pool and the whole lazy river oasis in the backyard, and we just recently did all brand new appliances. And we had California closets come in and do $20,000 closet in our owner's suite. and we did floor to ceiling tile on the TV wall. And all of those things may add value to the home. The value that it brings and the cost that it cost the seller could be two different things. And that seller could be thinking, well, this is what I spent, this is what it costs, so that's exactly what I want it to contribute. And that may or may not be the case. Oftentimes, most sellers are not real estate experts. They may not understand that the price they paid for doing that special tile on their bathroom wall, that might be considered an over improvement, where market value or most buyers aren't going to necessarily be willing to pay dollar for dollar for the cost. They're going to be paying something less than dollar for dollar. Now, this is just an explanation so you can understand if a seller misinterprets cost and value, this could be why you see those overpriced listings on the market. And you as a buyer, you're waiting for one of those two things to happen, right? Price drop to meet where market value or market demand is, or they keep jumping from real estate agent to try and sell it. Now, the flip flop of that is going to be when a buyer mistakes cost for value. A buyer may mistake cost for value because they may be moving. There's just an example, real life example. If a buyer's moving from, say, Washington State, and they're used to home prices that are 3-4 times the average of what we have here in Tucson, and they come in and see something and they're thinking, wow, I built a house 5 years ago and it cost this much and it was half the size and it was just as nice as this one for half the price. They're thinking cost and they're willing to pay whatever that price. It might even be the overpriced listing in the neighborhood. If they're thinking about it from the perspective of what they paid previously, they're not necessarily thinking value-based, what did other people pay for a similar house in that same neighborhood. They're thinking, man, when I built my house for half the size, it cost twice as much, right? And that was in a different area in Washington. So that's where you can see those anomalies happen in the market, where you do see an overpriced listing come on the market. And for some of us watching in the market, we're like, ooh, that seems like it's a stretch for sure. But occasionally you see it getting taken off the market and go into contract. And then you see a sell for, say, their asking price, which seemed very high, or which was very high comparatively. That can be when a buyer misinterprets cost versus value. Now, another piece of this is also depending on what type of market you're in. An example would be Dove Mountain, primarily a luxury market, versus Vail, primarily a suburban market, caters to a tremendous draw because of the school district, but they are two very different markets. Now, value versus price is going to be a little bit different in both of those markets. The value of, say, a view in Dove Mountain, or the value of some upgraded gourmet kitchen features on the interior of a home in Dove Mountain, may actually carry more weight than what it does in Vail, because people moving into a luxury market tend to have a different expectation of what their home has and what's included in it, versus people moving into an area that is not necessarily as luxury centric. That can also describe why there might be some nuances in some areas, if you're a buyer paying attention, why if there's one segment of an area that seems to be, maybe gated, a little bit more exclusive feeling, and you're seeing those homes and prices and values trend differently, days on market trend differently, versus part of the same community, but it's not a gated portion, where those homes might sit a little bit longer, or maybe you see a significantly different price per square foot, or even just a different demand level in general. That can be the reason why. So now that we've covered that, I'm now going to share with you the 4 things that I look for as a real estate professional and real estate expert here in Tucson to help my buyers navigate getting the best deal in any market. Now, to give you some background on exactly what I'm going to be breaking down, first, let's just talk about the truth of where the market is. Right now, about 22 to 28% of all listings on the market are selling below their asking price. And that number jumps even higher when you talk about areas like Gladden Farms, Vail, and Star Valley, for instance. So what that means is that strategic buyers have the advantage in today's market if they know how to use it. So here's how you can take advantage of it. The first thing is going to be tracking the days on market. Now, I talk with buyers when we do our initial consultation with them, and we're talking through we're talking through the strategy piece. We know their timeline, we know what they're looking for, we've identified areas. Next, we're talking about the actual strategy of how to get them and secure the home that they want at the best price possible. Days on market and tracking days on market is one of the first things that we're going to talk about, because once we've identified a number of homes that could be good fits, looking at how long those homes have been on the market will tell us a story of potential motivation from the seller. It can also tell us a story of potential negotiation that can be done. If a home, for instance, is been on the market for a week or 2 weeks, that seller is less likely to be negotiable. Now, would they still be willing to negotiate? Potentially, but let's say that seller being on the market for 14 days versus a seller that's been on the market for 4 months, those two sellers are operating from two completely different mindsets, typically. I mean, let's face it. If you've ever sold a house before, or if you haven't, if you could imagine trying to sell a house, the biggest financial decision any of us get to make, and you're watching home after home go into contract in your neighborhood, but you, for some reason that you can't find out and your agent can't articulate to you, has been on the market now for 4 months, you're going to start to feel a certain way. Most of the times that's going to be a little bit of desperation. You're going to start to realize, man, if I want to get this sold, I'm going to need to wheel and deal a little bit. So that is the first indicator that we look for. That can be a really good piece of evidence that we can strategically navigate and negotiate a really good deal for you as our buyer. Now, the sweet spot right now in our market, generally, every submarket's a little bit different, but I would say once you get past about 45 to 50 days, that's kind of the tipping point. I mean, that's where, representing both sellers and buyers, that's the tipping point in which most people start to have a shift in their game plan or start to consider a shift in strategy, which is a good thing for buyers who are strategic, smart, and paired with people who can navigate that with them. All right, second thing that I look for is understanding the sales price to list price ratio in the specific submarket that you are considering. Now, real quick, just for those of you that may not know, the sales price to list price ratio is just simply a comparison between what the homes in this area have sold for compared to what they listed for. So they're comparing those, and creating a ratio will tell you, out of all the homes that have been listed and they were listed at X, what did they end up selling for, and what's the difference? What percentage of their original listing price, essentially what they were hoping to get, what percentage of what they were hoping to get did they actually end up selling for? That's the sales price to list price ratio. Now, in areas like Vail and Marana, for instance, that sales price to list price ratio can be 97 to 98%, meaning that sellers, whatever the seller wants, they're statistically, they're getting 97 to 98% of what they're hoping to sell their house for. Now, this can differ based on submarkets, which is exactly why you need to know this, because areas like Dove Mountain and Oro Valley that have more of an emphasis on luxury, those sales price to list price ratios are about 99 to 100%. So sellers are getting a lot closer to what they hope to sell their home for versus other areas. Knowing this data helps us navigate the negotiation from a place of certainty. It also gives us position to be a little bit more aggressive in the negotiation instead of shooting from the hip and trying to do a bunch of guesswork. The third thing that I look for is identifying overpriced homes, the overpriced homes that we've talked about that have really good bones. Ideally, maybe they haven't even been updated. If we're working with a buyer who isn't necessarily afraid of a renovation, this is some of the biggest opportunities that we're seeing in this market, because if it has really good bones, that can mean that all of the renovating that needs to be done is not necessarily going to be as complex and complicated as having to move walls and cut foundations and deal with a lot of revamping of the structural components. The key here is to start identifying those homes and keeping tabs on the things I mentioned before. Timing, so how long it's been on the market, what the sales price to list price ratio is doing in that area, and then tracking and looking at how many price reductions they've done over that period of time, however long they've been on the market. The fourth thing that I look for is builder inventory that's on the market in a particular area. This is oftentimes something that is completely misunderstood. Even though you're shopping in new construction, the builders' prices are not set in stone. Builders are very quietly offering 3 to 5 to 7% additional concessions or price off the house if you know how to tap into it and if you're strategic about capturing that. There are a couple key ways that you can do this. One of the easiest and most affordable ways is going to be hire a professional that understands the negotiation strategy and how to negotiate with builders. Somebody who specializes in new builds and has done so for 15 plus years, maybe even someone who's a licensed real estate appraiser that you're watching a video about right now. You can reach out to me. I'll be happy to navigate that with you. There are absolutely deals that can be had in new construction that oftentimes we're seeing are beating anything that can be attained in the resale world. So in other words, there are opportunities in every single market. There are tons of opportunities in the market that we have today, just like there were tons of opportunities in the market we had 3 years ago. And guess what? There's going to be more opportunities in the market we have 3 years from now. It all just boils down to understanding the dynamics of what is happening in the market, because every market is a little bit different. Tucson specifically, these are some specifics that can help you navigate that. And if you need any help at all, grab my contact information out of the description, put it on screen right here for easy access so that we can get connected. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed this video and got some value out of it, hit that thumbs up button for me. That lets me know that the titles and all the research and all of the information we're putting together to make these videos powerful for you is being received well. Also, be sure to comment below which of these was the most valuable piece of information for you. Until next time, we hope to see you around the neighborhood.